Okay, here's one other area that we need to discuss based on results from the quiz. For this one's from chapter 7, when we're talking about social influence and specifically persuasion. So this idea of when you're presenting, is it best to go first or second or last or you know in the kind of ordering of things. So to help us kind of look at this a little bit more, what I wanted to have you do was a brief activity with me as you're watching this video. Okay, what I'm going to do is just show you a list of words, one word at a time on the screen. So all I want you to do is pay close attention and focus on those words that you're seeing and try to remember as many of them as you can without writing anything down or any of that kind of stuff. And you'll have 2 seconds to see each word. Okay? So relax, sit back, get ready, and here we go. Okay, there they all were. Think you got them all? How many do you think you got? I'm not going to tell you how many there were, because that might make it a little easier for you. Okay, but do you remember seeing the aardvark from the list? Well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 1 minute to write down as many of those words as you can remember. So, ready, set, go. Should have got a little timer with some background music or something going at the same time. All right, down to 15 seconds. And 3, 2, 1. All right. So, how well do you think you did? How many do you think you were able to remember? Well, let's just make it easy for you. Here's the list. So, look at the list, compare your list to this list, and come up with how many you got right. Obviously, aardvark wasn't on there, just trying to throw you off a little bit. Okay. More important than how many you got right for this particular discussion is which out of the list did you get right or did you get correct? Okay, so here's the question from the quiz. The blank effect refers to how information that is presented last can have the most influence. And the options were recency, primacy, channel, and final. So in that case, the idea here would be the words that came later on in the list, well, going along with this question anyway, if you were better able to remember them, say elephant, walrus, sheep, pig, if those were the words that you did a good job remembering from your list, that would be considered the recency effect. That stuff that comes last or second is easier for us to remember. Okay, versus the primacy effect, prime coming at the beginning. So if you did a good job remembering cat, dog, horse, tiger, those that are more at the beginning of the list, that would be referred to as the primacy effect. Now, obviously, in this case, this is just a list of words. I'm not up here, giving some persuasive speech or, presentation, and then I've got another, opponent who's doing the same thing. So I'm not really trying to persuade you. Or am I? well. Let's go on to the next one here. So if we look at the primacy effect, okay, basically that's what we're talking about here. First impressions are very important. So when someone's giving a presentation, those initial impressions that we form are important as far as our attitudes and beliefs go. Because once we have kind of formed our belief or our attitude, you know, it's harder to change once it's kind of formed and set. Okay? And so basically this primacy effect just states that information that comes first tends to have a greater impact or influence on us and our thinking. That's the primacy effect. And most often this is the effect, if you compare primacy and recency, this is the effect that tends to have the most impact on the way we think and the beliefs that we have. Okay, just one quick example. They've done some research with political polls and looking at the way kind of voting happens. The candidate that is listed first, that tends to be an advantage, getting more votes, okay, with political polls. All right, so let's compare that to the recency effect then real quick. The recency effect, on the other hand, is the information that's presented last or second tends to have more of an influence. Okay, and so this doesn't, that influence isn't as great. It doesn't, you know, impact our thinking and our beliefs as much as the primacy effect does, or that information that comes first. Okay, but of course there are always exceptions to the rule, and here we have the times that this is most likely. So the recency effect would most influence and help us change our thinking and our beliefs when the situation follows these two key points here, or has these characteristics. Okay, number one is that there's actually a gap or a time lapse between the first presentation and the second presentation. So it's not like you go and then your opponent goes. It's like you go and now we have time. Maybe people go and have lunch or, you know, whatever. Then they come back and then they have the second presentation. Okay, and not only that, but then they also need to have to make some sort of decision or commitment or whatever right after that second presentation. Okay, and though in that, if the situation has those two characteristics, that's when the recency effect is most likely to happen, or that, you know, that second or last presentation is going to have the most influence. Okay, that kind of makes sense because with the time lapse or the gap between the two presentations, then, you know, all of the ideas and information presented in that first presentation, you know, there's some time for that to be forgotten and misremembered and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So when the second presentation comes and we have to decide immediately, it would tend to have more influence on us. Okay, so that's the idea. Primacy at the beginning, recency at the end, and how those two influence our thinking and beliefs.